Hey, this is Eli Danzy with Boni and Bella podcast. Thanks for listening. This is the podcast to be kind, do good, you are beautiful. We bring on weekly guests on Fridays who are just everyday people, families, businesses, nonprofits, doing that in the world, being good, being kind, and knowing that they are beautiful and giving that to other people, sharing the good news and motivating you to be a better person, to be a better self, and to make the world a better place. I also provide motivational 3 to 4 minute thoughts every couple of days on this podcast. So subscribe, listen, write a review, let me know what you think. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye. Hello, Alex.
Hi, Eli.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
So much for joining us. I really appreciate your time, and I'm super excited to talk to you today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for asking.
And so the listeners know, this is Alex Boudreaux. And did I say that right?
Yeah, got it right.
Very good. We're off on the right foot. And I know you through Regina Chaley Academy,
Right.
which is the hybrid homeschool program that my kids and my wife are at. And so my wife teaches there, and I know you teach there as well. And my kids go there, and it's an awesome hybrid homeschool program.
Absolutely. We love it.
And your son there is Bo, correct?
Bo. And Bo is going to be starting 5th grade this year. So he's a year behind your oldest, Emily.
Awesome. Yeah, he was at the birthday party just last month or so, and he had a
Right.
great time, and it was a lot of fun. So
Right.
he's a good kid.
We think so.
Awesome. Well, and so tell me a little bit about yourself. I only know you a little bit. We need to learn more about you guys, but tell me about your background and kind of where you come about yourself.
Right. So, my husband and I both grew up in small towns in Louisiana, probably about 10 or 15 minutes away from one another.
Wow.
I was born in North Carolina. My parents were both in the Marine Corps whenever I was born, but my husband was born in Louisiana. And then my dad's family is all from there. So after my dad got out of the Marines, we moved back home to where his family was, and that's where me and my brother and sister all grew up. And my husband and I met in high school. We were about 2 years apart. Yeah, we were 2 years apart from each other in high school, and so he graduated a couple of years before I did, and went on to college and work and did his own thing. And then I graduated, and we kind of reconnected after high school and started seeing each other around more places and spending a little bit more time together, and just kind of hit it off, and got married about a year after we started dating, and immediately started traveling with his job after that. So we've bounced around from, New York, Mississippi, all over Texas, a few different other jobs, in the 11 years that we've been married. And about a year after we got married, our son Bo was born. And so he's spent all that time traveling with us too. He's bounced around a lot. He was born in Louisiana, but he's lived most of his life in Texas, so he's a little Texan, I think. And let's see, from there, I guess that's where we just kind of get into everything.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Thank your father for his service. And
Yeah.
Did he mainly serve in North Carolina or Louisiana?
So it was actually my mom and my dad.
Cool.
They were both enlisted. Yeah. And Dad, they kind of did the whole, both of them only served for their, the initial 4 years. They didn't re-enlist after that because I guess at that point they had started a family. So they decided to move back home and settle down. But they both kind of did dad went to Norway for a while. They both were in
Well,
Okinawa for a while. And then dad was mom. Let's see. So mom finished before dad did. So he was the one that was still enlisted when we were in North Carolina, and that's where I was born. And then when I was about 6 months old, we moved back to Louisiana. He was finished up.
wow.
Yeah.
Well, God bless him for that, and that's interesting. So you really been traveling around your entire life, or I guess the majority's been in Louisiana, but you guys
Majority.
are,
Yeah.
yeah. But so what does your husband do on for a living?
So my husband is a land surveyor, and I, I, in case anyone's not familiar with that, because I wasn't whenever we first started dating, he basically is the guy that goes out there and well, most of his survey work that he does is oil fields. So he's the guy that supervises, the guy that goes out there with all the equipment and tells tells construction workers where to put pipelines. So they go out there and they survey the land, find out, where if there's anything existing out there already, and get, just tell everybody where everything needs to go. Pretty much, he's done mostly oil field work his whole career. He did some work offshore whenever he first started surveying, and he really, really enjoyed that. But it wasn't good for the family because he'd be gone for like 6 weeks at a time, and he'd come home
Oh
for two
wow,
weeks, and then he's home for, a week or so, and he's back on a boat for another 4 weeks, so
that's hard.
yeah, that was tough. And then when we got married, he had this job opportunity to start, working oil field on land, so with the pipelines and stuff like that. And he just told me, he's like, the only way I'm going to be able to do that is if y'all are going to come with me. And I was like, yeah, definitely. So being able to be a stay-at-home wife and mom was never anything that I even dreamed I was going to be able to do. I grew up, my mom had to work, my dad had to work, and so I just figured we would have that same lifestyle. Both of Brian's parents worked, and I figured we'd
Right.
just stay in the same small town, and we'd both work. But this was a blessing that God was able to provide for us, and it has just truly been one of the most wonderful things about my life. I never expected to be able to stay at home and raise my kids, so that's been awesome.
Yeah, that's a good point. God is good. I mean, I've been able to provide by God's grace and love through the last 12 years of our marriage, and we have 6 kids now, but somehow God provides. I mean,
Right.
I just put out a little podcast on that. I mean, we just had to have faith and trust, and
Right.
and not give up, and not give in to fear, and not give in to doubt, despair, and just keep moving forward and take the next step. I mean, it sounds super simple, but in reality, it really is. When we just give it up to God, then
Oh,
we can do
absolutely.
all things. He can do all things. So,
Yeah, definitely.
so, so tell me about kind of the family life and Bo. So, how old is Bo now?
So Bo is 10. He just turned 10 this summer.
Okay.
And I have, like I said, we traveled with Brian's job since we were married. So about a year into the marriage, Bo was born. He was born actually like 2 weeks after our first anniversary. So he would,
Wow.
we started our family quick. And he traveled with us, and it got a little bit, in the beginning we weren't sure how it was going to work out once he was school age, and did we really want to raise him away from our families and where we grew up. And so there was a little bit of time that we when he was about a year and a half old, that we thought we were going to try um and move back home. I did get a job for about 6 or 8 months. I was working in the emergency room as a receptionist at our the emergency. My mom is also, she went back to school after the Marines, and she got her nursing license. So she worked in the local emergency room, and I gotten a job as a receptionist there. And Brian um, attempted to go back into his dad's old painting business that he had back at home, just painting houses and stuff like that. And so we gave that a shot. And Didn't work out for us. It was really tough financially. So Brian did end up going back into the same work again, the traveling, and because we knew that if he put in his time, eventually we would be in one place. And so we figured we'd just put in the time doing that, and we travel for a little while. So when Bo was about 2 years old, we started traveling again. Around that time, we found out that we were pregnant with our second child,
Okay.
and we were super excited.
Yeah.
We made it to, I did develop some complications in that pregnancy. My prenatal blood work, my doctors noticed that I had hyperthyroidism. So my thyroid was overactive, right? So he sent me to an endocrinologist, and they were following me for that. And they did the whole workup and started with the ultrasounds and blood work and medication and all that stuff. And when I was 16 weeks pregnant with that pregnancy, we went in for just a routine appointment and found out that we had lost the baby.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was tough. That's probably where everything started turning around for us, because up until that point, Brian and I were both raised Catholic, and we went to church on Sundays, maybe not every Sunday, but we did. And we went to CCD, and we made our, first communion, confirmation, did the whole 9 yards. But I don't, probably in the first 2 years of Bo's life, we probably took him to church on holidays and maybe a few other Sundays, and that was it. Brian and I had no kind of prayer life together as a married couple. I look back now, and one of the things that I'm probably more hopeful for in our marriage is that eventually we can go back and like have our marriage blessed again, because I think I'm like, did we really even know what we were doing? Did we really even appreciate the sacrament whenever we received it? We weren't making great decisions then. We lived together before we were married, which is something that, we both wish that we could take back now, but it was, what we did. And so we weren't going to church, and we weren't living like we were supposed to. We weren't praying together as a couple. And then we lose this baby, and everything changed. So it was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever gone through. But immediately after that, my endocrinologist finds out about the pregnancy loss. He tells me that we're going to proceed with a total thyroidectomy, which was his plan, was to completely have my thyroid removed. And I'm like,
wow.
well, wait a minute, hold
Yeah.
on. Like, up until this point, you didn't really seem like it was that big of a deal. And he kind of went over all of my ultrasounds. I had a large goiter on one side, and I had like 13 nodules on the other side, I think.
Oh man.
So they go in and they remove the whole thing, and there were some cancer cells. So it was stage 1 papillary thyroid cancer, but it wasn't anything. Everything was isolated to the nodules, and it was nothing that I needed to go through any kind of treatment for.
I see.
So we didn't have to have, everything was removed, and then we started with the synthetic thyroid hormone, which was another nightmare, because that's, anytime you mess with a woman's hormones,
Yeah.
it's just a recipe for disaster. So then we got pregnant again, actually, in May. So I had my thyroid removed in March, and we found out we were pregnant again in May, and I almost immediately had a miscarriage. So that was 2 babies in less than a year, and then the thyroid, and then, yeah. So that was, if that's not a wake-up call, if that's not something and it sounds terrible that it takes tragedy like that to get you back in your prayer life, but at that point I was just lost. The closest thing I can equate it to is probably like the image of the apostles in the boat, in the water, in the middle of the storm, and you're just like, they were just like looking for Jesus, and
right.
I just was in the middle of that storm.
Wow.
And so I started getting back into my prayer life and going back to my roots, I guess, praying a rosary again and just looking for, I just needed some comfort.
Like the only thing you can hold on to when you hit rock bottom.
Yes, exactly. And you never want to be that person for it to have to all, the bottom to fall out for before you, come back to your prayer life like you should. But that definitely was where I was.
Yeah, just humankind though. I mean, we've all been there.
Right.
I can count at least 10 times in my life where I probably hit rock bottom, or what my perspective of rock bottom is.
Right.
It's somewhat of a subjective thing because we're all different
Right.
human beings. But man, yeah, you just got to step back and realize, man, it's all about God, and there's
Yes.
nothing else.
Nothing
There's
else.
nothing else.
There was
So.
no other comfort that I found during that time. None. And Brian is the type of person that, he just he's like, everything's okay. Everything's all right. It's all right. He just he doesn't really freak out about things. He just kind of
Right.
deals with it. And he's like, it's okay. It's going to be okay. This is going to be fine. And, so probably about 8 months after the second baby, we lost Brian's dad. Brian
Man.
was 27 years old at that time, and so that was hard for him. His dad was 56 or 57 when he died,
Wow,
so
he's young. Yeah.
he died young, yeah. And then all of a sudden, Brian was without his best friend, so that was probably, you lose two children, two babies, and then you lose your dad. Around that time was when he was diagnosed with epilepsy. So,
Hmm.
we,
Oh my goodness.
what was initially just kind of gaffed off as panic attacks, by his doctors. So they're like, no, you're just having anxiety, just panic attacks, because it was weird. It wasn't a typical seizure. He's diagnosed with a complex partial seizure disorder. So it doesn't look like a grand mal seizure or something like that someone else is having, but you can definitely tell that something's going on, and he blacks out, and there's not, it's obviously it's gotten more serious at times over the years. It's dangerous for him to drive. It's, dangerous for all those things. So anyway, initially they diagnose it as panic attacks, and they give him, like anti-anxiety medication, depression medication, and all that does
Oh
for seizures
goodness.
is make it worse.
Yeah, just make it worse, sure.
Yeah. So he had one really bad seizure at work, and then we were dealing with an official diagnosis after that. All of that was about 6 years ago. When it was about 6 years since he's been diagnosed. So we've just been kind of navigating that since then. That's been one of the harder things that we've gone through in our marriage, because it's, as the man of the family and the father and the husband and the sole provider, you don't, it's hard to accept that there's a limitation now, to what you're able to do. Like all of a
We
sudden
can do anything. What are you talking about?
right, exactly. Exactly. You can do anything, but all of a sudden now he's dependent on his wife to pick him up and drop him off at work, and there's no, free time, just him and his truck on the way home from work anymore. And there's, all of it. I'm not going to speak for him, but I'm assuming all of a sudden as a man, you're like, well, some of my masculinity has been taken away. You know what I mean? So
Totally.
yeah, so that was tough. And it took him a while, I think, to come to terms with that. But when we moved here, which was almost 3 years ago, he started attending That Man Is You at OLPH at our church. And
Great
that,
ministry.
yes, absolutely, that was night and day for us. He has been, that I think is when his conversion really, really kicked in. Because before then, it's like we'd go to church, because I was like, we gotta, I had gone through my stuff, and I'm like, we have to cling to God. We got to go to church every Sunday. We've got to pray our rosary. We've got to do this and we've got to do that. And I think Brian was just kind of along for the ride at that
Right.
point. But when he joined this ministry, something changed. It's like all of a sudden he got it. He could see God better. He could hear God better. He understood his role more as a husband and a father. And I think God at that time gave him the grace that he needed to just kind of accept the diagnosis for what it was and just, move forward at that point. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Good
So,
for him.
yeah.
Wow.
So
That
that's been a
everybody
huge blessing.
everybody comes through it on their own. I mean, it just depends. I never know what's gonna happen, and God finds his way.
Definitely. And it's exactly like you said, everyone comes to it on their own. That was a hard thing for us for a little while, was, him seeing me saying like, okay, we got to go to church and we got to this and he just wasn't quite there yet. You know what I mean? Like but he's always believed in God and had faith, but he's just come to such a different understanding of it. And it's just everybody on their own time,
Wow. So that's been 3 years running
So
that he's been in that ministry,
3 years running, and he loves it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was in that ministry for a while. It was fantastic, man. It really challenged you. I mean, I can't remember the founder's name. I think his name is Steve Bowman.
It sounds right.
But
Yeah.
he's a fantastic man out of Houston. So I definitely recommend that for any men. That man is you, and it's in a lot more parishes now. It's growing, and there's a women's ministry too that's associated with the same organization.
Right.
I can't remember what it's called, but
I think I'm not 100% sure, but I think that one might be Blessed is She. I know
yeah, that
that.
sounds familiar.
Yeah, I know that there's one of the guys that's involved in That Man Is You at OLPH.
Mm-hmm.
His wife is trying to start up the women's ministry, also the one that kind of correlates with it. But
Right.
you're right. It's available in so many more parishes now, and they're doing so much. There's Sam Knott, I think, is the guy that runs it at OLPH, and he is just going above and beyond to try and make it available to as many men as possible. When it first started, it was only like Saturday mornings at like 6 or 6:30 in the morning, and so it was tough just for us, because Brian wasn't driving, so it was like the whole family's
Right.
getting up at 6 in the morning and driving Brian over there.
Wow.
And so
Dedicated.
that was a sacrifice that we made as a family. But when you see the growth that is happening, it doesn't even feel like a sacrifice anymore,
Right.
And but there's so much now that they're trying to do, like they have it available at different times, and they even have like a teleconference that they do on like
Wow.
weeknights. Yeah. So
Impressive. That's
yeah,
awesome.
there's a lot of time available for you to try and make it out to those now. So that's good.
Right. So tell me about the last half year, the last 6
Yeah.
months.
So the last 6 months have probably been the craziest.
After all that, wow.
I know. After all that, it's like now we're here. So that's the big stuff. So in January, I started having abdominal pain, just kind of random, and it didn't seem like it was anything that was super serious. And I just kind of was like, it was limiting what I was eating a little bit, but it wasn't like, crazy.
Yeah.
So I wasn't too concerned about it. But in the first week of March, I ended up in the emergency room with severe abdominal pain one night.
Wow.
And so they did a little bit of blood work, and ended up doing a CAT scan. And they're like, we're pretty sure it's just diverticulitis. Which is something that, can be a real pain. But if you just kind of manage your diet and things like that, it's not anything that could, it's manageable. So I was like, okay. And they're like, just follow up with your primary doctor and, make sure that everything's getting better. Stay on a liquid diet for a little while, whatever.
Doctors are human, though. So.
Right. So I followed up like I was supposed to, because I really was having to limit what I was eating. And it was just it's like, if I ate anything that didn't agree, it wasn't even really my stomach. It was more my intestines, and if I ate anything that just didn't sit right. It's like I was, back at square one. I was having, these pains in my left side, and I was going to have to, go back to the doctor again. And so I really think that that was God's, because I know myself, and just dealing with everything that we've dealt with, especially like with Brian and his seizures, I've been like, if it wouldn't have hurt me as much as it did, I wouldn't have seen about it, because I would have put it off. I
Right.
would have been like, it's not that big a deal. So we end up going in to see my primary doctor, and she's like, okay, well, if you have another flare up, she's like, you're going to have to go to see a gastroenterologist. Well, it happened again. So we end up with a gastroenterologist. He was really easygoing about it. He's like, you're not telling me anything scary. He's like, but we're going to go ahead and do a colonoscopy just to make sure. Because, we just don't know what's there unless we go and look. And so I'm sure everything's fine. Totally reassuring me. Everything was fine. So I was like, okay, we'll go in. So we go in the day of, and I'm super nervous, super, super nervous. And, but like, I'm, praying my Hail Marys and everything. Okay, it's going to be fine. And so we go in, and, everyone was so good to me in there, and I felt really relaxed. And the next thing that I remember when we came out, was I was in this recovery area, and it wasn't even like a closed off, isolated area. It was like a room full of stretchers and curtains. And this doctor comes in, and I'm still, under the anesthesia to some extent. Like, I'm still waking up. I'm still groggy. And he just comes in there, and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's cancer. And
Oh my gosh.
I'm
Wow.
like I'm still halfway out of it, and he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's cancer. And I'm just looking at him like, but you said
Did you really just say that? And it makes it
right.
sound like you just ordered a sandwich. Like, yeah, I'm pretty
No.
sure it's ham and cheese.
Yeah,
Like, what?
exactly. I'm pretty sure it's ham and cheese. And I'm pretty sure. And so I was just like
Oh my goodness.
stunned.
Wow.
And he's like, we're
Just
running
so
some,
nonchalant about it,
so
man.
nonchalant. And he doesn't even pull me into this other room. Like, we're in the middle of this recovery room with all
I'm
these
so
other patients. And I'm
sorry,
like, are
Alex.
you
Oh,
kidding? So at that point, mom and dad had actually come in. Dad does the same kind of work that Brian does, so they travel a lot. But they were in Louisiana in between two projects at this time, so they had come in. This is the day after my mom's birthday and 2 days before their wedding anniversary. So she's
oh my
like,
goodness.
she's like, oh, that's okay. We don't have anything planned. We'll come in. So she comes. She's like, I'm sure everything's fine too, but we just want to be there with you. So it's me and
Well, that was
Brian and
nice.
my
They were able to
mom.
come in there.
Yeah, it was
That was
amazing. Thank goodness now, looking back, that they were able to come. So it's me and Brian and my mom, and we're just in the recovery room. Like, she's trying to help me, get all my things together and get my clothes back on and everything. And this doctor just kind of pulls the curtain back and just nonchalantly tells me it's ham and cheese. So,
wow.
so he's like, we're running, a few more tests. I have to run genetics on the biopsies that I took. And, we need to wait for everything to come back from the lab, but I'm going to schedule you for a PET scan. And he's like, I'm pretty sure. And I'm just looking at him, and I'm like, is there anything else that it could be? And he did say something about, well, possibly endometriosis. He's like, the way that it looks, I really think. And so at that point, I'm just like, it's just endometriosis. At this point, it's been 7 years since Brian and I have been able to get pregnant again. We've done nothing to prevent a pregnancy. We've had these two, terribly sad miscarriages, and we've done nothing, to prevent after all this time. So I'm like, it's just endometriosis. It's endometriosis. That's all it is. Like, I go home, and he's like, you'll hear something back from me tomorrow. But we go and we sit down with this nurse, and I'm still, like I said, I'm still coming out of anesthesia. That seemed like that time was only like 5 minutes since he told me that until I got out the door. It went by like really fast, but really slow at the same time.
But it seemed like 5 hours probably.
Yeah. So they scheduled the PET scan, and I went home. And so at that point, mom and dad are like, well, we're going to stay until, we're done with all this and we see what's going on. And He calls me. We go in the next morning. I have the PET scan done. The lady asks me whenever we're in, she's like, and the lady asked me right before my colonoscopy, she's like, "You're not pregnant or anything, right?" And I was like, "No." She did a pregnancy test. It was negative. We went in for the PET scan. "You're not pregnant. You won't be around any kids." "No, everything's fine." So we have the PET scan done. I get a call from him at about 5 o'clock that afternoon, and he said that it's colon cancer. So,
Oh my goodness.
31 years old.
Wow.
I was diagnosed with colon cancer. And at that point, he had like everything. He's like, we did the PET scan. The
Wow.
results, like we had a couple of different areas. He's like, we saw the tumor, but then there was another area on your liver that lit up. He was like, if this cancer spreads, usually the first place that it goes is to your liver. So we need to have you go in for an MRI of your liver tomorrow. So that was another one that I had to go do. So we went in. We waited probably about 3 days for those results because it was over the weekend that they had done the MRI. They called me back and said that the MRI was okay. It looked like it might have just been some fatty buildup or something, but it looked like there was no cancer in the liver.
Mm-hmm.
So Brian and I had decided at that point, it had been almost a week since diagnosis. We decided we wanted to go ahead and go to MD Anderson because I'm 31 years old. I'm not going, like, I just want to make sure we're doing everything we can.
Sure.
To,
Of course.
To fix this.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely. Fight it.
yeah. So we called and, I let my, gastroenterologist know that that's where we wanted to go. He sent over the referral and, we got an appointment within a couple of days. I went for my first round of appointments. I'm sorry. I went for just my first appointment. I went for my first appointment with just the oncologist, and then he gave me the name of the colorectal surgeon that he was going to refer me to at MD Anderson. So I had my appointment scheduled with them. And the weekend before that appointment, I took a pregnancy test because I woke up one morning, and I just was like overcome with this fear. I hate that word, but because it sounds like a total lack of faith, but it was fear.
Yeah, we're all afraid sometimes.
Right. With this overwhelming fear that I was going to be pregnant. And I was like, I have this one pregnancy test in the cabinet. I'm just going to go ahead and take it. It's going to be negative like all of the other ones have been for the last 7 years, but it's going to put my mind at ease. And it was not negative. So apparently,
God bless you. Wow.
Right. The weekend before my colonoscopy, Brian and I got pregnant, and we found out 2 weeks after my diagnosis.
God works mysterious ways.
He
Wow.
absolutely does.
Oh,
so after 7 years of infertility and 2 weeks after a colon cancer diagnosis, I found out that I was pregnant.
It just happens. I mean, it's wow. I don't even know what to say.
Believe me, no one knew what to say less than me.
Oh my goodness, Alex, that's wow.
Yeah. And there's this initial like worldly fear of like, what are people going to think of me? Like, I didn't do this on purpose. And I was just
no,
I know, it sounds horrible. It sounds horrible, but that combined with I have to be totally honest with you, and it hurts my heart to say this. It really does. But that is the first time that I ever seriously, genuinely questioned God. I just remember looking at that test, and I just cried. I just began to shake and cry immediately, and I was like, God, do you want me to die?
Of course. Wow.
Because that changed everything. Brian and I would never consider abortion or terminating a pregnancy or anything like that, whatever you want to call it. They would just never be a consideration for us.
Yeah, of course not.
So
But
I
it's like
knew,
after everything you've been through,
yeah,
and then you're finally pregnant again, but now you have cancer, and it's like,
yes.
gosh, it must be running through your mind. I mean, I can't even fathom
And the
what's
last
running through your
pregnancies
mind.
did not go well either, you know? So it's like, that's another
No.
thing.
So it's a blessing, but also it's just so scary.
Right, right. So that's where we're at right now. My oncologist, as you can imagine, and this was probably the thing that took the longest for me to get over. Their first recommendation was termination.
Wow.
Um,
Their first recommendation.
their first
Like the first words out
recommendation.
of their mouth. Wow.
Absolutely. But you
Wow.
have to understand that with these brilliant men, with these, you know, brilliant minds that whether they realize it or not, God has given them. At their first recommendation is to just dismiss this baby and, you know, terminate this pregnancy. But they couldn't even tell me that themselves.
What do you
They went in and had a conference and decided amongst themselves that that was their first recommendation, and that they would have their PA call me and tell me that that's what they
Wow.
wanted me to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh. Wow. They can't even have the character of
No,
this
they couldn't
character.
even say it to my face.
Character period and say that to you. Not even to mention that is awful, obviously an awful choice that they would have to bring that option to you as number one. I mean,
Right.
gosh, even the thought. I mean, it's a human life. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
And then that's what she said to me. She said they need you to understand what their first recommendation is. And she told me, and she said, "Do you understand that?" And I said, "Yes." And it was hard because she's obviously, I don't know what religion she follows, but she was obviously a Christian, because when I told her, I started to cry and I said, "I can't do that." And she said, "I understand that." And she said, "I understand that because I couldn't either." She's like, "But I have to tell you
Wow.
what they asked me to tell you."
Wow. So she was obviously conflicted even making that phone call to you to
Right.
say that.
Right.
Wow.
So so we had our conversation, and she proceeded to tell me that if I decided to refuse their initial recommendation, that what their next course of action would be, their next plan of action would be to get me to 35 weeks and then deliver the baby. And that I was going
That's
to have
option
to,
two.
that's option two. That's option two.
So do they refer you to like Planned Parenthood or
They
what?
never referred me to anyone, and thank goodness for that. It wouldn't have made a difference because I wouldn't have even,
No, obviously not. But I
but
just
they
want to know
never
like
did.
what their next. Okay, so they're just
No.
like, oh, you should go get an abortion. That's a
Yeah,
recommendation.
and that's just it. There's
And then
nothing, and
leave
just
you
leave me
at your
to
own
figure it
devices.
out. Yes, exactly, to
Wow.
figure it out for
Mhm.
myself.
The
And
medical community has failed
I
us
was so,
inextricably. So many people. So many people. I mean, can you just stop and think for a second? Like, if you didn't have faith, you know what I
right,
mean? And if you
right.
didn't know that that was a human life, and if you didn't even think that it was a human life, and if no one even told you it was a human life, and if you'd never gone through what you've gone through, and if, oh my God, Alex,
Because it's
you know, just,
scary.
yeah, and you, yeah, exactly. But if you weren't married, I mean, all these things in your life that have been
Yes,
blessings to you that have brought you to this point, and then have them say that, but you had the character, obviously, and the knowledge and the forethought and the beauty of God to say no.
yes,
But imagine if somebody didn't know all those things and didn't have all that and didn't know that God loved them and didn't know that that was a human life.
exactly,
It honestly makes me want to cry just thinking about it.
exactly,
And oh my God, I'm so
exactly.
sorry that you had that conversation. But of course, you moved on. You took a step. You took a step into fear and into love and all these other things, and you said no to that. And you said yes to life. So
Right.
I'm getting excited. Now, I
Now we
definitely want to
need
hear
to
the
be
rest of the
excited
story.
because
Oh man, you're awesome. This is awesome.
this
This is an
is
awesome
it
conversation.
is awesome, and that's why I was so excited to talk to you, because the gravity of this story, we gave one of my oncology nurses last week, that I'm sorry, actually Monday, that hooked me up to my chemo pump this week, because that's the rest of it. That's the rest of their second recommendation, but we'll get back to that. I tell her an extremely abbreviated version of our story, and she like her eyes, like she had the wide eyes and the open mouth, and she like she was just stunned. And every time she'd come back in the room, she's like, 7 years y'all couldn't get pregnant, and you're pregnant
Wow.
now. And she
Wow.
just couldn't get over it. And it's like, it just hit me like,
It is hard. It's hard to get over. Oh,
we're supposed to be sharing this for, whatever reason. God is using this for something. And I can't believe that
of
he's
course.
trusting me with it, but he
Of
is.
course.
So,
He is. He's called you. He seriously called you. Wow. He's called you guys, you and Bo and Brian, to like take on this cross, this torch, but this is amazing gift. Like the
right,
gift of life is in
right.
you, but also it's not, it can be seen as obviously a cross and like a terrible thing. You have
Yeah.
cancer, but at the same time, like you can do amazing things by just telling your story, and like
Yes.
that you're not going to give up this fight against this thing called cancer in you, but you're also like living for your life, but also the baby's life.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
God.
she's completely, it's a little girl. She's completely dependent on me,
Wow.
Gosh,
What's her name?
okay. We got to get
What's
into that story now. So,
I know her name. That's why I'm so
I
excited
know.
for you.
Okay. Their second recommendation was delivery at 35 weeks and, X amount of rounds of chemo once I was in the second trimester. And honestly, I don't even think they cared if I was in the second trimester. They just were like, we're going to give you chemo because we can't do nothing. So, and which initially I was already angry because of their first recommendation to just
Sure.
dismiss my child. And then I turned around and I got this recommendation, and I was really, really angry because it felt like they were punishing me for not doing what they wanted me to do. So I had a really hard time with that. Well, okay. So back to her name. 2 days after, so we found out that we were pregnant on a Sunday morning. We went to school the next day. As you know, we're at RCA with y'all, and so we go in on
Right.
Mondays and on Thursdays. And we woke up for school on Monday, and I'm packing lunches and getting ready to go. And Bo comes out of his room, and he's like, "Mama," he's like, "I think I'm having a sister." Now, anyone may think that we were crazy for telling our 10-year-old that we were pregnant after he's been begging for a sibling for, 6-7 years. And I have cancer, and we just found out we were pregnant the day before. But it's like, he's our only child. So he's very, very, we're a really close knit family. And I didn't believe that there was any way that he was not going to be able to like hear about the baby from somebody else. This is not something that I was going to be able to keep from him. And we didn't want him to hear from anyone but us.
Share the good news.
So, yeah. So we let him know about the baby, and he goes to bed that night, and he was super excited when he wakes up the next morning. "Mom, I think I'm having a sister." I said, "Why do you think you're having a sister?" "I don't know. I don't know if it was me or if it was God, but I had this dream last night, and I think I'm having a sister." And I'm like, "Okay." So he like
Wow.
kind of
That's
left it at
exciting.
that and didn't say anything else. Well, he comes back, and I'm sorry, we were leaving school that afternoon, and he's like, "Do you want to know why I'm thinking I'm having a sister?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." So he says, "Well, this dream that I had last night," he's like, "we were at school." And he was like, "It must have been the end of the day because Miss Danzy was up at the front and she was praying. We were saying all of our prayers. And then Miss Danzy said, 'Gianna.'" And I said, "What?" He said, "Miss Danzy was praying for the baby and she said, 'Gianna.'" I started shaking. I'm driving on
How did she know
four.
that you were pregnant? What do you mean?
So at this point, she did know. I think Kate did know. Yeah, because I told her
Oh,
that
okay. But
day.
she didn't know it was a
But
girl.
no, this was in the dream, though. This was not like this was Bo's
Oh
dream.
my gosh.
He said,
You had
"Miss,"
that dream?
yes, he said, "Miss Danzy," and this is for, okay,
What?
to further connect it. We found out that we were pregnant the day after St. Gianna's feast day. And then he
Wow.
has this dream the night that he found out that I was having a baby. He has this dream that we were at school and Miss Danzy was praying, but she was praying for you and the baby, Mama, and she said Gianna. And then he woke up. Now, Bo, up until this point, Bo is familiar with a handful of saints, but he knew nothing about Saint Gianna Beretta Mola. Nothing. He did not know that she was the patron saint of unborn children and mothers. He did not know that she had had a tumor herself and given her life for her daughter. Um, he just knew that he had a dream, and it was something about Gianna.
God,
And
that is beautiful. Oh my
I
God.
was stunned. At that point, I took it to mean that Saint Gianna was interceding for us, and that if this was a little girl, that we were going to have to name her Gianna. Well,
Oh my
it was a
gosh.
little
Oh,
girl.
it's a girl. It's Gianna. I'm
It's
so
a girl.
excited. That's my
So
daughter's name.
we've
Oh
prayed.
my goodness.
I know. And I told Kate, I said, I hope you don't mind sharing the name. She's like, of course not. So
But do you know our story
I
for a
don't.
second?
I don't. I know an
Well,
abbreviated version of it.
I've shared it on here before, but
Right.
we had 3 kids, and then we had a break of 3 or 4 years because we had
Right.
3 miscarriages too.
Right. I did know
And
that.
actually, Kate told me a story one time that she had a dream about a woman that looked like Mary
Wow.
and coming and a daughter or a girl walking toward Mary in the dream, and like she just saw this very clear image of Mary and a girl walking toward her, and she just felt this like protection
Yeah.
that the daughter was okay. And so we've had 3 miscarriages, and we didn't name any of them Gianna, but we got pregnant with our our basically our 7th baby,
Yeah.
3 on earth, 3 in heaven at that
Yeah.
point. But we wanted to name it Saint Gianna because of just what had happened to us with 3 miscarriages, and just give it over to her.
Right.
And of course we had our 4th baby on earth, Gianna, and oh my goodness, we just put
And
it into her
she's
hands, and
perfect.
that's she's amazing. And oh my gosh, wow. So he
Yeah.
had that dream of Saint Gianna,
So Bo had
of
the
John.
dream of, and like I said, we were at RCA and we were praying. He said it was like a regular school day. Everyone was in their uniforms. Miss Danzy was up at the front. She was praying, and she was praying for you and the baby. And she said Gianna, and clear
Wow.
as day. And he tells me this at like 3:15 in the afternoon. So I mean, he still remembered it like he had just woken up.
Wow.
And so at that point, we
God bless
started
the
with,
bow, man. I
I
didn't
know,
know that. That's exciting.
it's
Wow.
amazing, isn't it? So we started with the novenas to Saint Gianna at that point, and then we found out 2 weeks ago that it's our little Gianna. It's a girl.
Oh my goodness. That is amazing.
And my biggest thing right now is that I just can't wait for her to get here, because I can't wait. I just feel like, she's going to be, so many people, um, so many people protest abortion and do wonderful things, March for Life, and standing on street corners in front of abortion clinics and things like that. But
Mhm.
she is going to be someone that you can put a face to the whole anti-abortion argument. Like, I'm going to be able to show her to someone and say, look, if she wasn't, like, if these doctors had their way, this little person would not be here. Not just some random soul that you can't put a face to. Like, this little person would not be here if you know what I mean.
Amen. Amen. Preach.
Yeah.
Preach. I
Yeah.
mean, you're so right. You're so right. Like,
Yeah.
man, just say yes to the Lord. Just say yes to God. And unfortunately, I think the medical community and put too much data and science and math behind things, and logic and reason. And I've said this before, but it's just lack of faith
Yeah.
and lack of God in our culture. Too often in this country, we've forgotten how we got here. We've forgotten how we got to this place
Right.
of a Christian culture, of a Christian nation, of a Christian society, and it's a lack of God. And if oh my goodness, and if just that entered into anything related to medical community and the health community, I think would be completely different. But and not just that, but our society and our culture has I think the beginning of it is abortion, but after abortion, like throughout people's entire lives, just the idea of life is desecrated,
Right.
because abortion is so held up here. in this
And
country and
widely
other countries. I
accepted.
mean,
Yeah.
exactly. And so the value of life has been completely demolished.
Mm-hmm.
And you're so right. And I just think it starts with faith, and it starts with faith in the home, and the fact that you're having a baby and your girl and Gianna. I mean, my goodness, it couldn't have picked a more perfect name. Just
No,
perfect.
it's just perfect. And you know, back to just what you were saying about faith, like I even, like I told you, my initial reaction to this pregnancy was fear. And Brian, just that's a testament to the growth that he has experienced over the last few years. He has never, not for 1 second has he been anything more than excited about Gianna. Not for a second. He's like, this is going to be fine. God is doing something big. You're going to be fine. She's going to be fine. And then we're going to have a story to tell. He has
Yeah,
never.
that's so important to have
Oh,
support
yes.
from a man, support from a
Yes.
husband, a boyfriend, whoever it is in your life. Like if you're a woman and you have support from a man, it just builds you up so much. Like
It makes all the difference, because it helped me to get over that fear. You know, never did I even consider not having this child, but I was still afraid, and I'm not afraid anymore.
what a man.
Yeah,
St. Joseph
exactly.
put it in his hands, and
Exactly.
they went on like what mule or what donkey for
Yeah.
what, how many miles? I mean, how
Yeah.
many weeks did it take them to get to Nazareth? I mean, it's just unbelievable, man.
Right.
What God can do, and only God can do that. Only
Right.
Jesus Christ can do that.
Right.
So wow, what a story. So where are you now? I mean,
So where are
in the whole
yeah.
pregnancy and chemo process.
Right. We are right at 19 weeks into the pregnancy. So we have crossed that little hurdle that was hard enough. That was harder for me to get through. I remembered, we made it past the first trimester, but then we didn't make it that far with our little angel baby Matthew. So I was just really, really nervous. And then you lump the chemo on top of it. But, we're at almost 19 weeks, like I said. So we're considering that she's most likely going to have to come 35 weeks or sooner. We're halfway now, and we have undergone 3 rounds of chemo, and she's still growing. And not only is she growing, Eli, she is in the 90th percentile in everything, all of her measurements. She is she's long and strong, and she's already almost a pound. So
Saint Gianna,
yes.
Saint Gianna, pray for us, Saint Gianna, Saint Gianna.
Amen.
I mean, then what would it have solved to have an abortion?
Right.
Like what would it have done?
It would
Nothing.
have
I mean,
done
and
nothing.
you've been okay. Like the three treatments have done okay. Like
Yeah.
how are you progressing there? I mean, what's
I've
going on
been
with that?
great. I've been a little tired, but I can't say that it's been anything more than that. And fatigue is a symptom of pregnancy, is a symptom of colon cancer, and it's a symptom of this chemo. So, I mean, there's really no way I was going to avoid it. But I can deal with tired any day. My baby's growing, and I'm still able to be a mom to Bo here.
It's a miracle.
Yeah.
It's a miracle that you're even pregnant and doing the chemo. I mean, that's a
Yes.
miracle.
Yes, it is.
Right? I mean, it's a
Yes.
miracle. A miracle of life is the miracle of life. Like if you're pregnant, that's a miracle.
Yes.
To begin
Absolutely.
with, to deliver a baby or a baby to go to heaven, where miscarriage, whatever. I mean, it's all a miracle. But the fact that you're pregnant and you're going through chemo with cancer, that is just an unbelievable witness to God.
Still able to get out and function in normal, everyday
and you're
life.
Smiling and you're laughing and you're alive and you're an amazing woman and you're giving this to everyone else in the world. Like, I don't know that people really understand it, and that's what your message is all about. Like, you can be happy even though you're going through suffering. You can be happy even though you're going through chemo. You can be happy even though you've been 7, 8, 10 years of suffering and trial and tribulation, but you gave it over to the Lord. You gave it over to Jesus, and with Him, you know that everything's going to be okay because He wins in the end. Like,
amen.
Wow.
Yes.
Unbelievable. It is unbelievable.
I'm
ecstatic. This makes me so happy. Like, you don't understand how excited I am for you.
I couldn't get through any of this though without the community that we have here, your sweet wife included. She is at the top of the list. Like, when we decided to switch to Regina Chaley last year, Bo was coming from a mainstream environment. I mean, he had done 6 months of online homeschool one time because we were on a short job and we didn't want to put him in a school and pull him right back out of it. But that
Right.
was our only experience with any kind of homeschool. And Brian just, we were originally friends with the Schleikers, and we knew that Misty did it. And I kind of started talking to Misty a little bit more about it because we wanted to move out of an apartment that we were renting, and I didn't want to have to worry about school zones too much. So I just was kind of getting a little information from her. And I came home and Brian said to me, we have to make this happen. I don't know how. I don't know what we're going to do. I know it's going to be expensive, but God is going to provide. He wants Bo at this school. I know it in my heart, like in the deepest part of my
Wow.
heart. And he's like, we have to make this happen. And so we struggled at
Man, you guys are
times.
so much more faithful than you give yourself credit for. Like,
Oh,
you
but
guys are so close to the Lord. Like, do you understand? Like, Bo's having a dream and Brian's talking
yeah,
about wanting to. I mean,
yeah.
obviously, something is pushing to RCA. Now you're here, and it is a
And now
family.
we're
Like,
here, and
I
it
can
is
attest to the fact that
exactly.
community of Catholics and Christians that love each other. Like, honestly, and that is awesome.
And I don't know what we would, and I tell Brian that all the time, like, how would we be getting through this if we didn't have our RCA family? And he's like, I know. He's like, God knew what he was doing. And that's just another testament right there. Like, when you step
Wow.
out in faith, you know, it might take a while to see, why you were supposed to do what you did, but it always comes back around, and you're always rewarded for it. I mean,
Wow,
without
it's been a
fail.
blessing to have you guys. I can tell you that much. Kate
Yeah.
loves you, and the relationship there is so strong. And
Right.
we need to get to know you better. That's a challenge for me. I want to get to know you guys better, and
Absolutely.
this is a huge start of that. So I'm
Yeah.
super excited to talk to you. This has been an awesome conversation.
I know I kept you a while longer than you
No,
usually do.
no, keep it going. Let's go.
Yeah.
Let's talk about prayer. How can we help you? I mean, prayer is obviously number one. Like, man, Novena to Saint Gianna. That's gotta be
Exactly.
number one.
Novenas to St. Gianna have been going nonstop, I think. We just pray. All I can ask for is prayer. Like I said, Kate actually was the one that organized it, but the moms at RCA, and then just a few other people through social media and stuff, she organized an adoration hour. Like, everybody just kind of signs up for an hour of adoration, and they go and they pray for me and Gianna, and spend an hour with the Lord. And I just am in awe of that, because I feel like there is no greater gift that you can give someone than to intentionally take an hour out of your time. And you're not even just sitting down at home doing it, which is totally fine too. These people are going to church and they're sitting in front of the Blessed Sacrament and praying for me and spending time with God for an hour. And that is such a blessing. I mean, I don't feel like there's any better gift that you can give someone than your prayers.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Absolutely. And I completely agree. That's oh man, what a challenge and an excitement. Like, I want to go to adoration now.
Right.
Like, that's absolutely a great point. Like, we need to pray more in front of the Blessed Sacrament.
Right.
So, and definitely pray for you guys. But what challenge or what challenge do you give to people? I mean, you have so many things that's happened to your life, and just stuff you've been through has just been amazing. That so many lessons to be learned, and
Mm-hmm.
God's graces. But what would you challenge people with?
Well, I think I would probably extend the same challenge that I have given to myself lately, and it's that one of the first things that struck me whenever I was diagnosed was that I had gone to my mom and I needed to get out of the house. I was like, I can't be in here. I need to get out and go somewhere. And we were walking around Hobby Lobby, and I just was like, I'm walking around with cancer, and anybody that walks up to me right now would not have any idea that there's anything wrong with me at all. And from that point on, I don't know, it really sat on my heart. And I feel like we need to all remember that everyone is carrying a cross, whether we can see it or not. And so we need to extend more grace and mercy to our brothers and sisters, and just to remember that, not everything that everyone is struggling with is visible, and we need to be gracious and merciful and kind, and just pray for one another, just love each other. I mean, and that's just something that I'm not perfect at, but I'm trying.
You have loved your daughter Gianna and your husband and your son so much. I mean, just you telling your story today is loving others and your family. Like the fact that you stepped up to the plate and like in fear, because I know it's scary.
Yeah.
And you told this story. Just imagine the people that it could touch and affect. I mean, wow.
I
And
hope
I
so.
completely agree with you. Like, man, we need more love in the world, more kindness, more help, more love. And
Right.
the more that we do that, the more that we give to people and the more that we share and help one another, just the world makes the world a better place. I mean,
Right.
how can you not? Like, everyone's going through something. Like, be
It's true.
kind. Everyone's fighting a battle.
And when you're having a bad day and like you go into, an interaction with someone and you're kind of grouchy about it, but they like are super friendly and they smile and they're really nice, like it's contagious. You walk out smiling and you feel better. And it's not that hard, to kind of take a little bit of someone else's load off of their shoulders, And so,
Absolutely. I
yeah.
completely agree. And Kate's known this about me, but I'm the type of guy to want to give people a hug,
Yeah.
give them a handshake, a high five.
Yeah.
I mean, you know me, you've seen me enough times to
Yes.
know that
And that's
I'll
awesome.
go when I go into a room and like hug somebody, like, you having a bad day, bro? Just give me a hug, man.
Exactly.
I mean, seriously, like, why not?
That's
Guys, come on,
because
step up to the plate,
exactly.
give each other a hug. What's the problem here, brotherly love, bro?
Exactly.
So anyway, this has been super awesome conversation. I've
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. This has been amazing. I didn't even know half this stuff.
Yeah.
Like, awesome, man. What a miracle.
I
Just
think
a
we covered
miracle of you.
everything.
You alone are a miracle. Like the fact that you're pregnant and have cancer. Do you understand? Like, wow. Like, wow.
I do.
I don't even know what to say. Like,
I know.
Jesus Christ, be
I
with
know.
us. Jesus
I
Christ,
know.
have mercy on us. Jesus Christ, pray for us. Like, wow. I mean, man, oh my God, you're going to be able to do so many things with that. Like the Gianna and Alex and you and Brian and Bo. I mean, just the whole thing is just amazing. Like
God's got big things planned. I don't know what they are, and I hope that I'm up to the task, but we're going to do it because He's done so much for us.
You're already doing it. Like, it's amazing to me. Oh my goodness. Let's talk again. I want to have Brian on. That would be cool.
Definitely. Absolutely. I think he was a little jealous.
Well, thank you so much, Alex. This has been awesome. Man, what a story. So I really appreciate your time today. And man, I'll share this with the whole world if you don't mind.
No, perfect. Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Absolutely. Well, God bless you guys. We'll be praying for you and Gianna and Bo and Brian.
Thank you so much, Eli. You too.
All right. God bless.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot for listening. I really appreciate it. Please subscribe, write a review, let me know what you thought. We're also on the web at bonibella.com, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Look us up, send me a message. Love to hear from you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.